Imagine this. You're the President of the United States. You're in the middle of your term. You have the nuclear codes. You have the most powerful military in the world at your command. And then one day, you just vanish. No explanation, no warning. Just gone. Sounds impossible, right? Like something out of a conspiracy theory? Well, it actually happened. And what makes it even more disturbing is that most Americans have no idea this ever occurred. It's March 1919. Woodrow Wilson is the President of the United States. He's just won World War I. He's negotiating the Treaty of Versailles. He's creating the League of Nations. He's literally reshaping the entire world order. And then, in October 1919, something happens that changes everything. The president suffers a massive stroke. He's paralyzed on his left side. He can barely speak. He can't walk. For weeks, he can't even sit up in bed. But here's the terrifying part. Nobody knew, not Congress, not the vice president, not the American people. The President of the United States was completely incapacitated, and it was kept secret for 18 months. So who was running the country? That's the question that should haunt every American, because the answer is more disturbing than you could imagine. His wife, Edith Wilson, became what historians now call the first female president. But she was never elected. She had no constitutional authority. She had no political experience. She was just the president's wife. And she decided which documents the president would see. She decided who could meet with him. She decided which laws got his attention and which didn't. She essentially became the president, and nobody could stop her. The White House doctor, Carrie Grayson, helped her maintain the lie. They told everyone the president had a nervous breakdown and needed rest. They canceled all his public appearances. They turned away senators and cabinet members at the door. Even the vice president, Thomas Marshall, wasn't allowed to see him. Think about what was happening in 1919 and 1920. The country was in crisis. There were race riots across America. There was the Red Scare and fears of communist revolution. There were massive labor strikes. Prohibition was being debated. Women's suffrage was being decided. And the president? He was in bed, barely conscious, while his wife decided which issues deserved his limited attention. Cabinet meetings happened without him. Laws were passed without his input. International treaties were negotiated with other world leaders who had no idea. The president couldn't even hold a pen. There's a famous story about a senator who demanded to see the president. Edith Wilson brought him to the bedroom, but kept the lights dim and the curtains drawn. The senator spoke to a figure in the bed who mumbled a few words. He left convinced he'd seen the president. But had he really? Or was it an elaborate stage show? Some historians believe Wilson was so incapacitated that he couldn't have had that conversation at all. Now here's where it gets really disturbing. The Constitution has a process for this. The 25th Amendment, which was added later, says that if a president is unable to discharge his duties, the vice president takes over. But in 1919, there was number 25th Amendment. There was just a vague clause in the Constitution about presidential disability. And nobody wanted to use it because nobody wanted to admit the president was disabled. Why? Pride, politics, and fear. Edith Wilson believed that if people knew how sick her husband was, it would destroy his legacy. His enemies would attack him. His peace treaty would fail. Everything he'd worked for would crumble. So she made a choice. She decided that protecting her husband's reputation was more important than the Constitution. More important than democracy itself. And the terrifying thing is, she got away with it. So what happened because of this cover-up? Well, quite a lot, actually. The Treaty of Versailles, which Wilson had fought so hard for, failed to pass the Senate. Why? Because Wilson was too sick to negotiate with senators, too stubborn to compromise, and too isolated to understand the political situation. The League of Nations, which might have prevented World War II, was created without American participation, because the president who dreamed it up couldn't fight for it anymore. Some historians argue that Wilson's incapacity directly contributed to the rise of Nazi Germany. Think about that. A stroke in the White House potentially changed the course of world history. But it gets worse, because this wasn't just about policy. This was about democracy itself. For 18 months, the United States functioned without a functioning president, without someone elected by the people making decisions, without transparency, without accountability. And the really scary part, it could happen again. You might be thinking, well, that was over 100 years ago. We have systems now. We have the 25th Amendment. This could never happen today. But could it? In 1981, Ronald Reagan was shot. For hours, nobody knew who was in charge. Alexander Haig famously said, "I am in control here," but he wasn't. Not constitutionally. In 2020, Donald Trump was hospitalized with COVID-19. The White House downplayed the severity. We later learned he was much sicker than they admitted. Every president's health is treated as a state secret. We don't know what medications they're on. We don't know their real medical conditions. We only know what they choose to tell us. And here's the question that nobody wants to ask. If a president's inner circle decided to hide a serious illness today, could they do it? With modern medicine? With media management? With careful staging? I think the answer might scare you. Now, I want you to put yourself in Edith Wilson's position for a moment. Your husband, the man you love, has worked his entire life for this moment. He's trying to create a lasting peace after the most devastating war in human history. He believes he's doing God's work, and then he has a stroke. Do you tell the world and watch everything he's built crumble? Do you let his political enemies destroy his legacy? Do you hand power to a vice president who doesn't share his vision, or do you protect him? Do you help him maintain his position just a little longer? Do you convince yourself that you're doing what he would want? It's not an easy choice. And that's what makes this story so complicated. Edith Wilson wasn't evil. She loved her husband. She believed she was doing the right thing. But in protecting one man, she undermined the entire system of government. Here's what bothers me most about this story. Most Americans don't know what happened. It's not taught in schools. It's barely mentioned in history books. We remember Wilson as the idealistic president who wanted to make the world safe for democracy. We don't remember him as the president who clung to power even when he couldn't fulfill his duties. We don't remember the 18 months when America had no real president. Why? Because it's embarrassing, because it raises uncomfortable questions. Because it suggests that our system of government isn't as stable as we like to believe. But we need to remember this story. Because the moment we forget that this happened is the moment it could happen again. And there are still so many questions we'll never have answers to. What decisions did Edith Wilson make in her husband's name? What opportunities were lost because the president couldn't lead? What laws were signed that he never truly understood? Who else knew the truth? How many senators suspected? How many cabinet members stayed silent? And the biggest question of all, if this could happen in 1919, when information moved slowly and the president was more isolated, how much easier would it be to hide today? The next time you hear about a president's health, remember Woodrow Wilson. Remember that for 18 months, the country had no idea. Their president couldn't function. Remember that his wife ran the country from a bedroom in the White House, and ask yourself, could it happen again? Would we even know if it did? History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. And this is one story we can't afford to forget. If this story shocked you as much as it shocked me, hit that subscribe button. Because history is full of secrets like this, stories that were buried, stories that challenge everything we think we know. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you think something like this could happen in modern times? Could a president's illness be hidden from the public today? I'll see you in the next video. Stay curious.